Raise your hand if you speak Spanish. Raise your hand if you speak French. Raise your hand if you speak Hindi, Mandarin Chinese, Arabic, Russian, Portuguese. What is the point of this, you might be asking? Well, in this room of 120 odd people, we realized that there's not a single language. I mean, I've just named some of the world's most spoken languages, but not one of them do all of us speak. Nonetheless, I'm able to fully express myself using my words, which you are then able to hear, interpret, and understand. I have a theory for why might this be, so let me ask you one more question. Raise your hand if you speak English. Right, there we go. See, our community benefits from having English as a universal language which facilitates communication between us. And this works in smaller communities such as ours, in tribes, in villages. But on a sort of global scale, we speak over 7,000 languages. And yes, I mean, there is some truth to that. But in reality, if we're looking at all 8 billion people on this planet, there's not a sort of single, ubiquitous lingua franca. But what if there was? What if all 8 billion of us spoke just one, only one, and the same universal language? Well, our world would change. We'd see travel would boom immediately, right? There would be no need for Google Translate. Things wouldn't be lost in translation. And so you would see huge amounts of international tourism, and with it, a big boost to our economy as well. We would become more connected as a society. Often you see that there's several jokes or puns which are sort of specific to one language, one culture, and are sort of untranslatable. But if we all spoke and understood the same language, well, we would understand each other better, we would understand each other's humor, and we would be, again, more connected. We would see huge strides in international diplomacy. It would become much more efficient. We wouldn't waste sort of precious time and resources having everything translated. And the risk of misunderstanding or conflict arising would be greatly reduced. This is an interesting one. We would make huge scientific progress. Believe it or not, 95% of all scientific publications today are in English. Therefore, anybody who wishes to enter the field of scientific or academia must spend time learning English and perfecting the language before they can publish anything. If we all had this universal language, not only would we be able to harness sort of the knowledge of thousands or millions more scientists around the world, we'd be able to do so in a much faster way, and we would make huge scientific progress as well. And finally, we would probably see a reduction in socioeconomic disparity. Language proficiency today, more than ever, is a barrier to certain opportunities. People have to know, be it English, French, Spanish, whatever language it is, in order to access certain opportunities. By introducing a universal language, we would remove sort of these barriers, and therefore would see a reduction in socioeconomic disparity. So, it sounds that if we introduced a universal language, our world would sort of become a much better place. Yes, there is some truth to that in the short term. But first, we would see sort of negative implications of it, especially in the long term, which I will elaborate more on shortly. But secondly, it's unrealistic. We would struggle to answer the fundamental question, which language would we speak, right? Some here might say English because it already plays a very important role in our day-to-day lives. Others might say French, Spanish, or Arabic because they're already official in a large number of countries. But the truth is that no matter what language we pick, there will always be people who feel as if a part of their identity is being ripped away from them. It's important. Identity, culture, language, they're all very closely linked, and you'll see more of that in a second. So, okay, we can't choose a language. Why not make one, right? Construct one. And it's been done before. The most notable is Esperanto. You've probably heard of it. It was a constructed universal language, which was sort of developed in the 1800s. It gained some sort of prominence, some publicity throughout the 20th century, but in the end, it never sort of found its footing, right? Partly because of the rise of English, but mainly because of the fact that there's no associated culture with Esperanto. You see that every language which we speak has an associated culture. It's important, and it's something I've seen personally having grown up in Singapore. In Singapore, we have 4 official languages. For those curious, it's English, Mandarin Chinese, Malay, and Tamil. And each of those languages is associated with a particular culture, because there are also very many racial groups in Singapore. And every culture, every sort of is celebrated equally. All national holidays are, as in all sort of religious celebrations are national holidays for the whole country. And often when each culture is celebrated, so is the language. Because of this link that we have between language and culture, it allows all 4 languages to thrive. Yes, English is used mostly in day-to-day scenarios, especially for the links between cultures, but all 4 languages still remain official. Members of parliament, for example, can speak in any of the languages which they desire, and it's something which is really celebrated. The point being that whatever, sort of, if there was a universal language, it would be erasing not only sort of the language, but also culture, history, and sort of thousands of years of human knowledge with it. Okay, we'll ignore all of this, and we'll sort of enter this hypothesis, this hypothetical situation in which we do have a universal language. Like Esperanto, it's a secondary universal language. What you will see is that in our world today, third culture kids, for example, I know I am, or I would call myself a third culture kid, I'm sure many of the others here will too. Children who are born in one country, who have parents from another, who have grown up in a third, you know, they tend to then use these universal languages. These are some pictures. That's myself and my brother on the right. These are 3 of our cousins on the left. All 5 of us are Indian by origin, but we've all grown up outside of India, and we all speak English as our first language. Some of them don't even speak a word of our mother tongue because they have no need to. English as a universal language is sort of enough for them to get by in their day-to-day lives. It's a true phenomenon. It's known as language loss, and you'll see that this is especially the case with smaller, more endangered languages, right? Even in countries like in India, where the rise of urbanization, the rise of Hindi and English has led to 196 languages in India alone being at risk of extinction. Now imagine the sheer number if we're talking on a global scale. Furthermore, there are multiple benefits to multilingualism, what you'll see. So not only do we prevent language loss, the death of history and culture, so to speak, associated with it, but we are smarter if we speak more languages. When a multilingual person tries to speak in a target language, the other languages sit in sort of the same neural networks. So all the languages are activated, so to speak, right? You have to ignore that intervention from the other languages in order to sort of speak in the desired target language. You might notice that this is why sometimes you end up switching sort of between languages in the middle of a sentence. You might sort of forget a word. You can only really remember it in a specific language. It's a phenomenon, it's studied, it's known as code switching. Earlier, I think it was seen as sort of unintelligent or, you know, it's not a good thing, so to speak, and that's why sort of immigrant parents were then advised not to teach their children their mother tongue. But now it's sort of a symptom, a side effect of being a multilingual. And I think it's a good side effect to sort of have to bear with because of the sheer benefits that being multilingual brings us. Because you have to ignore this intervention, because you have a stronger focus, you're also able to multitask better. You suffer from less stress and anxiety. And there are other health benefits. For example, increased rates of recoveries after stroke. And in cases of Alzheimer's, the onset of symptoms in multilingual patients is up to 5 years after the onset of symptoms in monolingual patients. So what's my point here? That introducing a universal language, if we all spoke the same language, not only would it sort of rip away a lot of our understanding of our society and our world, but it would make us stupider in the end of the day. Instead, these universal languages can be used as a tool as was done by several British primary schools. Under the supervision, it was a study conducted by the University of Manchester, where Esperanto was taught to these primary school students, so that when they later in life, because Esperanto has roots in it's a Romance-ish language, so it's similar to French, Spanish, Portuguese. So when these students were to learn those languages later on, it would be easier for them. And if it's easier for them, they're stronger in that language, and it reduces our reliance on English, for example, and it allows us to have sort of greater communication with others, right? You might see it as well. I know it's a thing in the Netherlands. It was also a thing in my school in Singapore, where Latin is studied a lot. I studied Latin for 3 years in an attempt to make it easier for me, and I mean for my classmates as well, to study, French, Spanish, etc. We live today in a very interconnected world. People, it's very international. People are flocking to cities for the first time now in history. More than 50% of our world's population live in urban areas. In the Netherlands, I think it's insane. It's 95% or something like that lives in cities and towns and urban areas. And these cities are becoming more multicultural than ever. So the need to communicate, and we've heard it a lot. I'm going to be corny. I'm going to do the thing. The need to communicate beyond borders is more pronounced now than ever. But we should strive to do so in a way which doesn't erase thousands of years of history, of culture, of our understanding of our world. We should strive to do so in a way which doesn't necessitate the use of a universal language, which doesn't necessitate over-reliance on these big languages. So, if you want to live a stronger, a healthier life, if you want to be smarter, and if you just want to have the ability to communicate with more people, then why not try learning a new language? Thank you very much.